Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. You won't want to miss the true, dark accounts I'm about to share. So sit tight and let's begin. It was late in the afternoon, October 18th, 2023, when I received the booking confirmation for the cabin. At the time, I didn't know it would be the last time I'd look at a normal Airbnb listing in quite the same way. I'm Ethan, a writer. From San Diego, always looking for a quiet spot to escape the usual noise and distractions of city life. I was deep in the middle of a project that needed solitude, and the description of the cabin couldn't have sounded more perfect. The listing promised a peaceful, remote cabin in the woods, ideal for reflection, rest, and inspiration. There were only a few reviews, but they were glowing, a perfect getaway. One said, "Unmatched serenity," another claimed. But there was something odd about it from the start. The location wasn't on the main map. It was deep in a forest, about 2 hours out of town. The GPS seemed to glitch when I tried to get exact coordinates, but I figured it was just a tech problem. I ignored it. I should have trusted my instincts. But the excitement of getting away from the everyday grind clouded my judgment. I left early the next morning, just before sunrise. The drive started out fine, with clear skies and the highway stretching ahead like any ordinary road trip. But the further I drove, the more the scenery started to change. The roads grew narrower, the trees denser, and the air colder. I began to wonder if I was getting closer to some sort of deserted place, the kind of place where you don't expect to run into anyone for miles. As the miles ticked by, a quiet unease settled in. It was around noon when I finally saw the wooden sign by the side of the road. It was old, faded, almost as if it had been abandoned for years. It read, "Whispering Pines," barely legible in the shadow of the thick forest. For some reason, that name stuck with me. It felt wrong, like something from a nightmare. I turned down a dirt road that twisted and wound deeper into the trees. There were no other cars, no other signs of life. The whole place was silent, like I was driving into a different world. The air became heavier as I approached the cabin, and that feeling of isolation grew. No birds chirped. The world outside seemed to be holding its breath. I arrived around 1:30 p.m., and as I pulled up, I saw the cabin. It stood there in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees. On the outside, it looked like something from an old storybook, charming, cozy, even a little romantic. The kind of place that could inspire anyone to write or create. But there was a certain stillness to the house, a quiet that felt unnatural. I parked my car and grabbed my bags, heading towards the door. As I stepped up onto the porch, I couldn't help but feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I felt something, but I couldn't place it. Maybe it was the way the trees were pressed so close to the house, or the eerie silence. Something about this place didn't seem right, but I tried to shake it off. I told myself, it's just a house. It's just a weekend getaway. The door creaked open before I could even knock. Standing in the doorway were Margaret and Samuel, the hosts. They both smiled warmly at me, but there was something about their smiles that felt a little too perfect, almost too practiced. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I smiled back, trying not to feel so uneasy. "Welcome, Ethan," Margaret said, her voice too smooth, too rehearsed. "We've been expecting you. Come on in, come on in." I nodded and stepped inside. But as soon as I crossed the threshold, a chill ran down my spine. The house was dark, despite the sunlight outside. The air smelled old, like dust and wood. The scent of something familiar yet unsettling. "I'll show you to your room, Margaret," said, leading me through the narrow hallway. I noticed a few pictures on the walls, but they were old, too old. The people in them looked distant, their faces blurred, like they had been faded by time. There was an odd pattern in the photos. Many of them were of people who looked like they were never quite in the present, like their smiles were forced. I asked Margaret if the house had been in the family for long. She nodded but didn't say much else, her smile faltering just for a second. Samuel stayed behind, watching us, his expression unreadable. As we walked past him, I couldn't shake the feeling that his gaze lingered on me a little too long. Too much interest in me. A stranger, I couldn't explain why it felt so strange. Margaret led me up the stairs and into the guest room, the one with the best view of the forest. She claimed. She opened the door for me. "This room has always been the most peaceful," she said, but the way she said it, like it was a ritualistic statement, unsettled me. The room was charming, yes, but there was a heaviness to it. The furniture was antique, and the bed, though comfortable, looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The curtains, drawn tightly, kept the sunlight from fully entering the room. I felt closed in. Margaret showed me around the rest of the house quickly, but her words felt rehearsed, as if she had said them 1,000 times before. Samuel joined us for a brief moment, but he didn't speak much, only nodding from time to time. When we finished, Margaret said, "If you need anything, just let us know. We're just next door." As I was left alone in the room, the first feeling I had was not relaxation or comfort, but something else. Dread. I sat by the window for a while, staring out at the thick looming trees that surrounded the cabin. The wind picked up, and for some reason, I couldn't help but feel the trees were whispering to each other, or perhaps even to me. "It's all in your head," I told myself. I tried to shake it off and unpacked, but something still felt wrong. Something I couldn't quite explain. The kind of feeling you get when you step into a place where the past hasn't let go. But I convinced myself it was just nerves. I was in a new place after all, and this was a much-needed break. I was about to turn off the lights and go to bed when I heard it, a soft, faint sound that seemed to be coming from downstairs, the sound of footsteps. Or was it? I waited in the silence. The footsteps stopped. Then out of nowhere, the doorbell rang. I stood frozen, my heart racing. No one should be here. Not this late. I looked out the window, but no one was in sight. I waited, and waited. Then the sound of footsteps came. Again, but this time, they weren't downstairs. They were right outside my door. I didn't move. My body felt frozen in place, but my mind was racing. The sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone was pacing, echoed outside my door. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck rise again. There was no way I was imagining it. This wasn't just some noise from the old house settling. This was someone. But who? I stood still, barely breathing, listening. The footsteps came closer, then stopped. For a second, I thought maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then, I heard it, the softest knock. Not a loud, insistent knock like someone trying to get in. No, this was quieter. Almost deliberate, like the person was testing if I would hear it. My heart raced in my chest, each beat thundering in my ears. I moved slowly, not making a sound, until I reached the door. I placed my hand on the doorknob, but hesitated. Something inside me screamed not to open it. But at the same time, I couldn't leave it locked. What if it was Margaret or Samuel? What if they just wanted to make sure I was comfortable? No, that didn't make sense. If it were them, they would have called out to me by now, wouldn't they? I decided to check through the peephole. I carefully pressed my eye against it, looking out into the narrow hallway, but I saw nothing. The hallway was empty, silent, cold. But as I pulled away from the door, I noticed something strange, the smell. It wasn't the musty scent of old wood or dust that had lingered in the room before. This was something different, something sharp, almost metallic. I turned back towards the room, the unease creeping back into my skin. The windows were still, shut tight, the curtains drawn. But now they seemed to loom over me, as if they were watching me. The walls felt like they were closing in. I tried to shake it off. I couldn't let my imagination take over, not now. I needed to get some sleep. I decided to lock the door and crawl into bed. I pulled the covers over myself, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. But sleep didn't come easily. Hours passed and the sounds didn't stop. The quiet footsteps outside my door continued, always moving, never still. And the longer I listened, the more I was convinced they weren't just walking. They were circling. Around the cabin, around the house. Around me. It was just before 3 a.m. when I finally couldn't take it anymore. The slow pacing outside my door, the feeling of something lurking just beyond my reach. I had to check. I had to know. I grabbed my phone and stepped quietly out of bed. My bare feet made no sound on the cold wooden floor, but my heart pounded in my chest like it was trying to break free. The footsteps stopped for a moment, a long pause. The silence was deafening. It was as if whatever was outside was waiting for me to make the first move. I crept toward the door, my hand trembling on the knob. I opened it slowly, inch by inch, praying that when I looked out, everything would be normal. But when I stepped into the hallway, my stomach dropped. There was something in the hallway, something moving. I could barely make it out in the dim light, but I could see the shadow, slim, elongated, not quite human. It was moving, but not in any way I'd ever seen. It wasn't walking like a person would. It was dragging itself, crawling, almost like it was scraping its body against the floor. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The shadow paused for a moment, as though it sensed me. Then, it moved. Again, its movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet with strings being pulled in 1,000 different directions. I tried to speak, but my voice was trapped somewhere in my chest. Every part of me wanted to run, but I couldn't. My legs wouldn't move. My mind screamed at me to go back inside the room, but my body was locked in place. Suddenly, a low, guttural groan filled the hallway. The sound was so close, I felt it, reverberating through my bones. I could feel it crawling beneath my skin. The shadow got closer. I had to do something. I couldn't just stand there like a fool. I backed up slowly, my eyes never leaving the shape in front of me. And then, it stopped, completely still. For a moment, I thought maybe it had lost interest. But then I heard it, a faint whisper. It was a voice, but it wasn't human. It sounded wrong, distorted. It didn't come from the shadow. It came from everywhere. You shouldn't be here. The words were soft, like they were being dragged through sand. I could barely understand them, but the meaning was clear. It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. I turned and ran. I bolted back into the room, locking the door behind me. My mind was spinning, my pulse racing. I grabbed my phone and tried calling Margaret or Samuel, but there was no signal. I tried again. Nothing. I grabbed my bag, rushed to the window, and tried to pry open the old wooden frame. It wouldn't budge. The house was like a prison. I was trapped. I don't know how long I sat there, heart pounding, eyes darting around the room. Every shadow seemed to move. Every creak of the house made my stomach drop. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I heard it. A faint knock on the window. It wasn't from outside. It was coming from the inside. The reflection in the glass wasn't mine. I couldn't breathe. The reflection in the window wasn't mine. I stared at the glass, my heart racing, my thoughts stumbling over themselves. The figure in the reflection wasn't a silhouette of myself, standing frozen with wide eyes. It was someone something else. For a moment, I didn't know if I was hallucinating or if the whole world had gone insane. My reflection, though, not mine, was standing directly behind me. Its features were distorted, warped by the dim light in the room. The face, if you could even call it, that was hollow, with dark, deep-set eyes that seemed to stare right through Emmy. Its skin was pale, almost sickly, like it had been drained of life. Its mouth was twisted into an eerie smile, a grin so wide it looked painful. I could see the faint outline of its teeth, sharp and jagged, like they hadn't been used in years. I couldn't move. The sight of that thing, the reflection, held me in place, paralyzed with fear. My breath came out in shallow gasps, too afraid to even blink. The thing in the window was alive. I could feel it somehow. It wasn't a shadow, not a trick of the light. It was real, and it was waiting for something. Waiting for me to react. I spun around, my hands trembling, my mind a whirl of panic. But there was nothing behind me. The room was empty. My reflection was gone, but the chill in the air remained. The oppressive, suffocating feeling that something was wrong hung over me like a thick fog. I stumbled back to the bed, my legs weak, my head spinning. I forced myself to sit down, the mattress creaking beneath me as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Was I losing my mind? Was I hallucinating from exhaustion? No, it was real. It was too real. I reached for my phone again. Maybe I could call for help. Maybe I could leave this place. But the screen was dead. No signal, no bars. My heart sank as I realized how completely alone I was. I hadn't seen anyone in hours. I stood up again, this time more cautiously, as if the room itself might spring to life and try to trap me. My eyes darted to the door. The footsteps from earlier, had they stopped? Or was I just too scared to hear them anymore? The silence was deafening. Then I heard it again. Soft but unmistakable scraping. At first, it was faint, just a whisper of movement. But then it grew louder, closer. The noise came from the floor like something was dragging itself, clawing its way across the house. I couldn't tell if it was inside or outside the walls, but it was getting nearer, closer with every passing second. I backed up, pressing myself against the far corner of the room. My eyes were glued to the door, but I knew better than to open it now. I had seen too much. I had felt too much. And then the scraping stopped. For a moment, the silence was suffocating. The room seemed to hold its breath. I could hear my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. My body was frozen, my mind racing in 1,000 directions, but all I could focus on was the door. Something was out there, I was sure of it. But what could it be? Was it the same thing from the hallway earlier, the shadow I'd seen crawling? The doorbell rang again. It was a long, drawn-out chime, different from the usual, normal sound. This one felt wrong. It vibrated through my bones like a warning, a sound that came from a place deep within the earth. The doorbell didn't stop. It just kept ringing, over and over, like something was trying to make sure I heard it, trying to make sure I answered. I couldn't take it. I couldn't just sit there anymore, waiting for whatever was out there to come for me. I grabbed my things, threw them into my bag, anything to make myself feel like I could leave. But before I could even make a move, the room went dark. Completely, utterly dark. The kind of darkness that wasn't just the absence of light, but a presence itself, like the room had swallowed it whole. I couldn't see anything, not even my own hand in front of my face. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers sliding over the smooth surface, desperately trying to turn the light on. But it was dead. The battery was drained, despite having had more than half a charge earlier. That's when I heard it again, the sound of something scraping, this time much closer. It was inside the room now, moving, dragging itself closer to me. My breath caught in my throat as I spun around, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever was there. But there was nothing. Just the oppressive darkness. The air was thick with something. Cold, cold as death. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the silence, as if the house itself didn't want me to make a sound. My chest was tight, my heart thundering in my ears, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. But I couldn't see. I couldn't move. The darkness seemed to press in on me, closing in tighter and tighter, until I could feel it on my skin, on my face, suffocating me. And then I felt it. A hand. Cold, unnaturally cold. It touched my shoulder. I jumped, my body instinctively recoiling. The hand moved down my arm, slow and deliberate, as if it was savoring the moment. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. "You shouldn't have come." The voice whispered in my ear, a voice I knew wasn't human. The words slid into my head like poison, paralyzing me, drowning me in terror. I had no idea where it had come from, or how it was inside my head, but I knew one thing for sure. It wasn't letting me go. The room began to spin, the world around me warping and twisting in a sickening way, and then everything went black. I woke up in the dark. It wasn't the same dark as before, though it was different. This time I was aware. I could feel the cold air on my skin, the sharp, biting chill that seemed to seep into my very bones. My head was pounding like I had just woken from some deep, unsettling dream. My mouth was dry, and my body felt like it had been dragged through something. Dragged. The word echoed in my mind like a warning. I tried to move, but something held me in place. Not physically, there were no ropes, no chains, no hands, but it was as if the air itself was heavy, weighing me down, pressing me into whatever surface I was lying on. I strained to open my eyes, but the darkness was thick, like it had substance. A force that kept my eyelids from fully lifting. The last thing I remembered, the hand ... and the voice. The voice that whispered in my ear. The words so cold and deliberate. "You shouldn't have come." I tried to scream, but nothing came out. My throat was tight, as if someone or something had been choking me in my sleep. I opened my mouth again, gasping for air, but it was useless. I was trapped, unable to move or speak. The sense of dread flooded my chest, tightening with each passing second. I could still feel that presence, the thing that had touched me, that had whispered to me, hovering in the shadows, just out of sight, just beyond my reach. It wasn't gone. It was still here. I could feel it. Slowly, my eyes began to adjust to the dim light, and I realized I wasn't in the bed anymore. I was lying on a cold, hard floor. The floorboards beneath me felt damp, and the air smelled faintly of mildew, wood, and something else ... Something metallic. It was the same smell I had noticed earlier. The one that had clung to the air like an omen. I pushed myself up, my arms shaking with the effort. I could barely make sense of my surroundings, but one thing was clear: I wasn't in my room anymore. The walls were different here. They were old, cracked, and covered in some kind of peeling wallpaper that seemed to be decades out of date. The floor was uneven, and the ceiling was low, almost claustrophobic. There was no door, no window, no exit. I was in some kind of ... basement. The thought hit me like a punch in the stomach. This place, it wasn't part of the cabin I had seen earlier. There was something wrong about this. Something hidden. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I slowly stood up, my legs unsteady beneath me. My mind was reeling, trying to make sense of what was happening. What had happened to me? What was this place? I scanned the room for any sign of life, any clue that could explain where I was. The walls were bare, except for a few pieces of faded furniture. An old rocking chair in the corner, its wood warped with age. A dusty bookshelf filled with books that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. And a tall, rusted metal door on the far side of the room. The metal door ... It looked ancient, almost like it had been sealed shut for years. But something about it called to me, like it was the only way out. I stumbled toward it, my fingers brushing the cold surface. The moment my hand touched the handle, a loud bang echoed through the room, making me flinch. The sound was coming from above me, from the cabin's upper floors. A door slamming shut? Someone moving around? My heart skipped a beat. Had someone found me? Or was it ... something else? I pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I rattled it harder, panic rising inside me. I was trapped down here, with no way out. No one was coming for me. No one even knew where I was. That's when I heard it again. The scraping dot, it wasn't a sound from the walls or the floor this time. It was closer. I froze, my blood running cold. My body went rigid as I listened. The sound was unmistakable, a low, drawn-out scraping sound that seemed to move through the floor, then the walls, and then closer, as though it was coming from behind me. I turned around, my breath caught in my throat, but there was nothing. The room was empty, silent dot, and then it happened again. This time, the sound wasn't just a scrape, it was a click. A slow, deliberate click, like a lock being turned. I whipped around, eyes wide, and my breath caught when I saw it. The door behind me, the one I had just tried to open, was now slightly ajar. Just enough for me to see the pitch-black void beyond. I didn't remember opening that door. The click came again, and the door creaked open wider dot, and then, from behind me, I heard the whisper. It wasn't the voice from before. This was a different voice, low, gravelly, like it came from somewhere deep underground. "Come closer." My blood ran cold. I knew instinctively what I had to do. I had to get out. I had to leave. But the door, it called to me. It beckoned. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't stop myself, dot, with my heart hammering in my chest. I took a slow step forward, then another. The darkness beyond the door seemed to stretch farther and farther, like it was pulling me in. I knew I shouldn't go, that every instinct in me screamed to run in the other direction, but I couldn't help it. My feet moved of their own accord, and I found myself standing in front of the doorway. I could feel the chill in the air coming from beyond. The temperature dropped the closer I got, until the air felt icy, like winter in the middle of summer. I looked back, just once, at the basement room behind me. But when I turned my head, I saw it. The shadow, the figure I had seen before. It was standing in the corner, its form barely visible in the dark, but I knew it was there. It was waiting, dot, and then with a sudden crash, the door slammed open. The door burst open with such force that I staggered back, my heart pounding in my chest. The cold air that rushed from beyond the door was like a gust of freezing wind, sharp and biting, like it had come from the bowels of the earth itself. I felt it cut through my clothes, through my skin, chilling me to the core. But what really took my breath away wasn't the cold. It was the darkness beyond the door. It wasn't just a lack of light, it was something far worse. It was alive, pulsing and writhing like it had a life of its own. A black void that seemed to stretch further and further the longer I stared into it. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the darkness itself was pulling me in, drawing me toward it. I wanted to run. I wanted to turn and sprint back into the room, back to the faint safety of the cold, cracked floor. But I couldn't. My legs felt like they were glued to the ground, my feet rooted to the spot. The whisper came again, only now it wasn't a whisper. It was louder, sharper, a voice that scraped across my thoughts like sandpaper. "Come closer." I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself, but the words were already inside me. I didn't know why, but my feet started to move. Slowly at first, like they were being controlled by some invisible force. I couldn't stop. I couldn't think. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but my body betrayed me. The closer I got to the door, the colder the air became. The cold was seeping into my bones, numbing me from the inside out. I could barely feel my hands anymore, my fingers stiff and frozen, barely able to grip the doorframe as I stepped through, and then I crossed the threshold. The moment I stepped into that place, everything changed. It wasn't just dark. It was wrong. The air was thick with something foul, something ancient, something evil. My senses were overwhelmed, and the feeling of being watched, of being surrounded, grew stronger with every step. I looked around, but there was nothing to see. The darkness was so complete, so oppressive, that I couldn't make out anything around me. No walls, no floor, no ceiling. It felt like I was floating in nothingness. I heard it then, the sound of movement. Slow, deliberate steps echoing in. The void. Clack, clack. The sound was close. So close, I could feel the vibrations in my chest. I turned quickly, panic rising in my throat. The darkness seemed to be moving, swirling like a thick fog, and then I saw something. A figure. It was standing in the darkness, its shape barely visible. At first, I thought it was another reflection, like the one in the window. But no, it wasn't a reflection. It was real. The figure moved forward, emerging from the blackness like it had been waiting for me. It was tall, unnaturally tall, with limbs that were too long, too thin. Its skin was stretched taut over its bones, pale and translucent, like it had been starved of life for years. Its eyes, if you could call them eyes, were dark holes, empty and bottomless, pulling at my soul with an intensity that made my breath catch in my throat. It smiled at me, but not a smile of joy. A grin, a horrible grin that twisted its face into something unnatural. "You shouldn't have come," it said, its voice a low rasp, almost drowned out by the thick, suffocating silence. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I couldn't look away. It was like the creature was pulling me in with its eyes, dragging me deeper into that blackness. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. All I could do was watch as it slowly took a step toward me. I tried to speak, but my voice was gone. My throat felt tight, like something was pressing on it from the inside. The air was suffocating, thick with a rancid, rotting smell that made me gag. It was like the creature, the very air, was corrupting everything it touched. I needed to move. I needed to get away from it, but the creature spoke again. This time, its voice wasn't just in my ears. It was inside my head, seeping into my thoughts, invading my mind. "You cannot leave," it said, its words vibrating through my skull. "You are part of this place now. You will stay here forever." The floor beneath me seemed to tremble, a deep, rumbling sound that made my teeth rattle. The darkness swirled tighter, pulling me toward the creature, toward whatever this place was. My body finally moved, but it wasn't my choice. My feet dragged me forward, my legs no longer obeying me. I could feel it now, the pull. It wasn't just the darkness, the creature, or the cold. It was something else, something deeper. The very earth beneath me felt alive, like it wanted me to become part of it, to sink into it, to be consumed. I closed my eyes, trying to shut it out, trying to block out the voice, the creature, the suffocating darkness. But the pull grew stronger. My thoughts became more distant, more blurred, and for a brief moment, I thought I heard something else. A voice. A real voice, not the whispering rasp of the creature. A voice I recognized. "Get out!" It was faint. Faint enough that I almost thought I imagined it. But no, it was real. The voice was calling to me. I opened my eyes, and in the middle of the darkness, I saw it a light. A flicker. A glimmer of something familiar. Without thinking, I ran toward it. I didn't hesitate. I couldn't. That light was my only chance. It was my only hope of escaping the suffocating, cold void that seemed to swallow everything I knew. The darkness was closing in around me, pressing on my chest. But I ran toward the light, pushing my legs to move faster, to break free. As I stumbled forward, the air seemed to grow thicker, denser. The light flickered again, just ahead of me, taunting me with its faint glow, drawing me closer. But the ground beneath me seemed to shift. The floor felt uneven, like it was twisting, changing with every step. I almost lost my balance as I trudged. Through the thickening shadows, the scrape, the clicking sound came again. This time louder, sharper, closer. And then, a low growl. A sound that made my blood freeze in my veins. I looked back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. But there was nothing there. Nothing but the blackness swirling around me, pulling at my legs, tugging at my very soul. It felt like the darkness was alive, like it was trying to drag me down, to swallow me whole. The light flickered again, stronger. This time, I pushed forward, ignoring the fear clawing at my insides. Every step felt like a battle, like something was trying to pull me back, like I was running through thick mud. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure. The same tall, grotesque shape from before, standing in the shadows, watching. And me, its eyes, those hollow, empty pits burned into my soul. It didn't move, but I could feel it, feel its presence creeping closer, like it was waiting for me to make a mistake, waiting for me to falter. "You can't escape," the voice rasped in my head, cold and venomous. It wasn't just speaking, it was inside me, echoing through my thoughts, clawing at my sanity. "You belong here. You always have." I didn't look back. I couldn't, but I could feel it, feel its presence, its hunger. The growl came again, closer now, vibrating through the floor like a sickening hum. The light was ahead. I could feel it. I could taste it. It was real, and it was my way out. I pushed my body harder, my legs screaming in protest, my lungs burning. With each breath, but I had to keep going. I had to reach the light before it was too late. The creature's growl came again, this time louder, more distinct. I glanced over my shoulder for a split second, and that was enough. It was right behind me. It was so close now that I could feel the heat of its breath on the back of my neck. A hot, rancid stink that made me gag. I wanted to scream, to run faster. But my body felt like it was shutting down, like I was moving through quicksand. Every muscle in me screamed for escape, but the creature's presence was suffocating. Like a weight pressing down on me, keeping me trapped. I reached out. My fingers brushed the edge of the light, and in that instant, the pressure on my chest lifted. The darkness, the suffocating cold, the creature, everything seemed to stop. For a split second, I thought I had made it, that I had found my way out. But then, everything shattered. The light flickered once more, and in that split second, the darkness closed in around me, swallowing the glow whole. I felt myself being pulled back, dragged away from the light, the creature's claws reaching. For me, its presence climbing into my head. I twisted in panic, desperate to break free, but my body was no longer my own. It felt like the darkness had taken hold of me completely, like it was weaving into my very being, wrapping around my heart, my lungs. I tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed before it could leave my lips. The creature was laughing. It was a low, dry sound, like leaves scraping across a dusty floor. Its voice was in my mind again, but now it was no longer just the cold rasp. There was pleasure in it, enjoyment. "You are mine now." It wasn't a voice anymore, it was everything. The walls, the air, the ground beneath me. It was a sickening, omnipresent force that flooded my mind, drowning me in its hatred. And then, just as I thought I would lose myself completely, I heard something else. A door, a real door. I snapped my head toward it. There was a flash of light brighter than anything I had ever seen, and then like a spark in the dark, the door opened. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I ran toward the light. I burst through the door, nearly tripping over my own feet as I stumbled into the bright light. The world around me shifted, and for a moment, I couldn't tell what was real. The darkness, the suffocating void that had been chasing me, seemed to vanish as the door slammed shut behind me. The light wasn't like the one from before. It was pure, almost blinding, like the sun had suddenly decided to make its presence known. I couldn't stop. I couldn't think. My legs carried me forward, each step quicker than the last, as though I was running from something I couldn't quite see. My heart was pounding in my chest, my breath ragged and sharp in my throat. The fear still clung to me, that gnawing, suffocating fear that something was just behind me, waiting for the right moment to strike. The light around me flickered, just like before, but this time it didn't feel oppressive. It felt like a way out. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was I hallucinating? Was this some cruel trick of my brain? But then I saw at the walls. They were no longer covered in peeling wallpaper, no longer the cold, decaying interior of a forgotten cabin. I was in an entirely different place. The walls here were smooth, white. There were windows, 2 real windows. I could see the outside. Whirled through them, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow across the trees. I could hear birds chirping, the wind rustling the leaves. It was like nothing had happened, like I was back to normal, but I knew better. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I turned, my eyes scanning the room in frantic desperation. It was a small room, almost sterile, with simple furniture. A desk in the corner, a chair that looked too polished, too clean. And in the center, the most unsettling thing of all, a mirror. It was large, reflecting the soft light, but it was too perfect, too smooth, almost unnaturally flawless. I moved toward it, drawn in by an instinct I couldn't explain. As I got closer, my reflection came into focus. But it wasn't me staring back at first. I thought I was just seeing things, maybe a trick of the light. But the reflection wasn't right. My face looked different. It was pale, too pale. My eyes, they were empty. No, it wasn't me. It was something else, something that had taken my place. I stepped back, a chill running through my spine. My heart began to pound faster. My breath became shallow, and my fingers trembled as I reached for the door. I needed to get out. I needed to get away from the thing in the mirror. The thing that wasn't me. And then the door slammed shut. I jumped, my pulse spiking. I spun around, my eyes scanning the room in panic. The mirror. It wasn't just reflecting me anymore. The figure in the mirror, it was moving. It wasn't me anymore. It stepped forward. Its hands reaching out, fingers elongating, twisting in unnatural ways. It smiled, a grin that was too wide, too sharp, like it was trying to tear through its own face. The reflection didn't match the movement of my body. It was slow, deliberate, as though the thing behind the glass was savoring every second, enjoying the terror it was causing. "You shouldn't have come," it said, its voice not mine. It was cold and full of malice, but at the same time, there was a strange satisfaction in its tone. I felt a wave of nausea hit me, my stomach churning as I realized this thing had been waiting for me. The reflection in the mirror moved again. But this time, it stepped out. I froze, unable to comprehend what was happening. I watched as the figure in the mirror, its grin growing wider, its eyes empty and dark, emerged from the glass. It wasn't supposed to be possible. It was impossible. But there it was. It stood before me, its body towering over mine. The air grew colder, heavier. I could feel the room closing in around me, as though the walls themselves were trying to contain the thing that had come out of the mirror. The smell of decay hit me, thick and suffocating, and I could hear its breath slow and steady, like the sound of something ancient. Something that had been waiting for an eternity. My mind raced. I needed to think. I needed to do something. But the fear that gripped me, the paralysis that filled my body, made it impossible to move. I felt like I was suffocating in the presence of the thing in front of me. "You belong here," it whispered, its voice low and deep, sending a cold shiver down my spine. The words felt like they were cutting into me, like they were carving themselves into my flesh. "You will never leave. You will never escape." I tried to move, tried to scream, but nothing happened. My body felt as though it was trapped in some sort of nightmare. The thing in front of me took a step closer, its face still twisted in that grotesque grin. I closed my eyes, hoping to wake up, hoping this was just another part of the twisted game this place was playing with my mind. But when I opened them again, it was still there. It was still real. And that's when I understood. This place wasn't just some nightmare. It was the beginning of something worse. Something that wouldn't end. The thing in front of me wasn't a reflection. It was something that had been waiting for me, and I had walked right into its trap. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering so loudly I thought it might burst from my chest. The thing in front of me, the creature, didn't move. It just stood there, grinning that horrible grin, watching me with those empty eyes that seemed to pierce through my soul. The air felt thick and suffocating, like something was pressing down on me, slowly draining the air from my lungs. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Every part of my body screamed to run, to get away, but my legs were frozen, unwilling to obey. My mind was clouded with panic, and all I could hear was that eerie silence, punctuated by the sound of my own uneven breathing. It took a step forward, just one step, and I couldn't stop myself. I stumbled backward, the cold, smooth walls pressing against me, trapping me in this nightmare. "You can't escape," the thing whispered again, its voice like ice, cold and cutting. It wasn't loud, but the words seemed to echo in my skull, reverberating through every inch of my body. "This place is yours now. It's always been yours." I shook my head, trying to block out the voice, but it was everywhere. It was inside me. The darkness that had chased me, the creature that had followed me, everything. It was all connected. Pressed my back to the wall, my hands shaking as I struggled to keep my balance. I had to think. I had to do something. The door, the one I'd come through, it was still there, behind the creature, but I couldn't move. Every time I thought about trying to get past it, a wave of dizziness hit me. I felt like I was going to collapse, my vision blurring. But then I saw something that made my stomach drop to my feet. The mirror, it wasn't reflecting me anymore. It was reflecting the creature. It was staring back at me, its twisted grin even wider now, almost impossibly wide. It's EYEs. They followed me. They didn't just look at me, they searched me. Like it knew what I was thinking, like it was trying to get into my mind. I felt it again, the pull, the darkness. It was everywhere, pressing in from all sides, clawing at my consciousness, trying to drag me back. My heart skipped a beat as I realized I wasn't just trapped in this room anymore. This place wasn't just some room, it was a prison. "This is where you belong," the thing murmured, and I felt its presence grow even stronger, suffocating. "You're just like me now. You'll never leave." The voice felt wrong, like it was familiar, like it was mine. It was at that moment that I realized I wasn't just being hunted by this thing. I was becoming it. I gasped, the realization slamming into me like a ton of bricks. The fear that gripped me, the terror that twisted my insides, it wasn't just fear anymore. It was acceptance. The creature had already won. It had already taken over. I tried to fight it. I tried to scream. I tried to do something, anything, but it was like my body wasn't mine anymore. My arms felt heavy, like they were made of stone. My legs were locked in place. My fingers twitched, but they couldn't move. I couldn't move. And then it happened. The creature's face twisted into something even more grotesque. Its grin stretched, its mouth opening wider than anything I thought possible. Its teeth, sharp, jagged, broken, revealing themselves like a predator about to devour its prey. It stepped toward me, its long skeletal fingers reaching for me, but before it could touch me, I felt something inside me snapped out the mirror. The mirror was cracking. I turned, my eyes wide, and saw the first hairline crack run across the surface of the glass. It wasn't just the glass, it was everything. The whole room seemed to tremble, as if the very foundation of this place was coming undone. I didn't understand. Why was the mirror cracking? Was it fighting back? "No," the creature hissed, its voice now a low growl, full of rage. "No, you can't," but it was too late. The crack spread, widening and splitting across the surface of the mirror, and with each passing second, the room around me seemed to shudder. The air itself seemed to bend, and a deep, resonant boom echoed through the walls. And then everything stopped. For a moment, The room was silent. The creature, no longer moving, stood frozen, staring at the mirror, its face twisted in shock. I looked around, my chest heaving, my breath still shallow, my mind spinning. Was this the end? Was I free? But then I heard it. A voice. Not the creature's voice, but a new voice. "You have to wake up." I turned, my eyes searching frantically. But there was no one. Only darkness. Only the strange, hollow feeling of being pulled in every direction at once. "Wake up," the voice repeated, more urgent this time. And with it, a flood of memories hit me, memories I didn't recognize. A feeling, a sense of dread, something I had missed before. But now, it was clear. This wasn't the real world. This wasn't even the world I had stepped into. This was all a dream. A nightmare. A trap. But before I could process it fully, everything went black. I woke up gasping for air, my chest heaving as if I had been holding my breath for hours. My surroundings were unfamiliar, but I wasn't in the room with the mirror anymore. I blinked rapidly, trying to focus, trying to piece together what was real and what was not. The air felt cool, and there was a faint scent of mildew in the air, a smell I had grown used to over the past few hours. The dim light of a street lamp outside filtered through a cracked window, casting long, thin shadows on the walls. I was in a bedroom, not the sterile, clinical room from before. This felt real, too real. My mind scrambled to make sense of it. But before I could think any further, the events of the last moments flooded back. The creature, the mirror, the crushing sense of dread that had nearly consumed me. Had it all been a dream? A hallucination? My hands trembled as I sat up, rubbing my face to clear the fog from my mind. I tried to stand, but my legs felt weak, like they had just run a marathon. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was something else. It was as if I had been changed. I glanced around the room, looking for any sign of what had happened. A clock on. The wall ticked steadily, almost too loudly, in the silence of the room. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner in the corner. Everything seemed normal, but there was an annoying feeling deep in my gut, a feeling that wouldn't go away. I was still in danger. I turned toward the door, my feet dragging as I moved toward it. The room felt suffocating now, like the walls were closing in. The door was just ahead, but as I reached for the handle, something caught my eye. The mirror. It was leaning against the far wall, partially covered by a sheet, as if someone had tried to hide it from me. My heart skipped a beat. That mirror, it couldn't be real. It couldn't be the same one. But it had to be. I knew it. The creature, the twisted reflection, everything that had happened, it was tied to that mirror. I had to get rid of it. I had to make sure it didn't follow me. I grabbed the sheet, pulling it off the mirror in a panic, and there it was. The reflection. But it wasn't just my reflection anymore. The creature's eyes stared back at me. Those dark, empty pits were there again, burning with that same insatiable hunger. But something was different this time. The reflection wasn't confined to the glass anymore. It was moving, shifting, twisting, like the glass was a window into another world, a world that was slowly bleeding into mine. The thing in the mirror smiled, a cruel, twisted grin that stretched wider than any human face should be capable of. It tilted its head, its eyes never leaving mine. "Did you think you could escape?" The voice came again, but it was louder now, not inside my head, but real. It filled the room like a thick fog. "You can't escape. Not now. Not ever." The reflection of the creature stepped forward, its form distorting, stretching. The sound of its bones cracking echoed through the room. I stepped back, my hands shaking violently as I backed away from the mirror. I had to get out. I had to run. But when I turned to leave, the door slammed shut on its own, the loud thud echoing through the room. I was trapped again. My heart raced as the creature's smile grew wider, its eyes gleaming with a terrifying mix of amusement and malice. It was no longer just a reflection, it was here with me, in this room. I could feel its presence, a cold, suffocating weight that pressed down on me. It was watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. I glanced at the window, but the moment I did, the creature's voice filled the room, sending a chill down my spine. Don't even think about it. The window, it was a way out. But the creature knew it too. It had me in its grasp, and there was nowhere to run. I froze. What did it want from me? Why couldn't I escape? Why was it here? Was it trying to possess me? Had it already? You think you can fight it? The creature hissed, its smile becoming even more twisted. You are me. You always have been. You're trapped in this place just like I was. I shook my head. No, that couldn't be true. I was me. I was still myself. I wasn't like it. But then, as I stared at my own reflection in the glass, something strange began to happen. I saw my face change, not dramatically at first, but enough to unsettle me. My skin became pale, my eyes grew dark empty, just like the creature's. The longer I stared, the more I saw myself slip away. I stumbled backward, my breath shallow, panic flooding my body. I was becoming it. I was becoming that thing. This is who you are now. The creature's voice was a low, mocking whisper. You can't escape what you are. You can't escape me. I felt my body trembling, my thoughts unraveling. I didn't know what was real anymore. Was I losing my mind? Was I going insane? Was this place doing something to me? Was it changing me, turning me into something else? I turned toward the door again, but it was still closed. The window still taunted me with its false promise of escape. The creature's reflection was growing, stretching beyond the mirror's surface, its form now looming over me. I had to make a choice. I had to face it. The air in the room felt colder now, heavier, as though the very atmosphere was being drained by the thing that stood in front of me. The creature's grin never wavered. It seemed to take pleasure in watching me struggle, in seeing the confusion and terror that racked my mind. It stepped closer again, its form now distorting, stretching in unnatural ways. I could hear the faint crackling sound of its limbs, like the sound of dry branches snapping, as its fingers grew long, impossibly thin. But even though the thing was changing, I could see that it wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was real, somehow. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. The mirror, the walls, the floor, they all seemed to bend and warp. It was as though the lines between reality and nightmare had blurred. I couldn't move. My feet felt rooted to the floor, heavy as if chains were wrapped around my ankles, holding me in place. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. I wanted to run. I needed to run, but my body refused to obey. I felt like I was drowning in this suffocating nightmare, trapped in a world where the rules no longer applied. You'll never get out, the creature growled, its voice harsh and gravelly, the malice behind it thick enough to choke on. You'll never escape. You belong to me now. I felt something cold brush against my cheek. I jumped, my heart pounding violently in my chest as I flinched away. But nothing was there. There was no cold wind, no hands, no creature reaching out to grab me. And yet, I felt its presence right there, just behind me, just inches away. You feel it, don't you? The voice purred, as though it were savoring every word. I'm in you now. I've been inside you all along. You just haven't realized it yet. I spun around, desperate, my eyes scanning the room, but there was nothing. Only the empty walls and the mirror, its surface now black, as though it had consumed everything in its path. The thing in the reflection, it was gone. No, it wasn't gone. It was inside me. I reached up instinctively, my hands gripping my head, as if I could pull it out of my own skull. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. The mirror had taken everything. It had taken me. I collapsed to my knees, my mind racing. Was this what it wanted? Was this its plan all along? I thought back to when I first arrived at the Airbnb, how the house felt off, how it had called to me in a way I couldn't explain. It was more than just the eerie atmosphere. There was something wrong about the place, something deeply unnatural that pulled at me, something I couldn't escape no matter how hard I tried. And then it hit me, this wasn't just a room. This wasn't just some twisted reflection. This was a trap. The Airbnb, the mirror, the creature, it had all been a carefully constructed maze, designed to confuse and ensnare me. It was never about getting out. It was about keeping me here. Forever. The creature didn't need to chase me anymore. It had already won. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking, my mind fighting against the crushing weight of despair. I had to keep my head together. I had to think. I glanced at the window again. I couldn't leave through the door. That much was clear. But the window, it was still there, a faint glimpse of the outside world. The dark trees, the shadows that stretched far beyond the house. I could see it. I could feel it. This wasn't just a physical trap. It was a trap for my mind. The creature knew my every fear, my every weakness. It had studied me. It had planned for this. And now, it was time for me to make the most difficult decision of all. I had to fight. I had to force myself to wake up. But how? The creature's voice mocked me again, a low, drawn-out laugh that echoed through the room. You don't have a choice anymore. I closed my eyes, blocking out the sound, focusing only on my breath. It was the only thing I could control now, the rise and fall of my chest, the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. I could hear the creature moving, its steps slow and deliberate. It was circling me, its presence growing stronger, suffocating me from all sides. It was waiting for me to break, but I wouldn't let it win. I took a deep breath, pushing against the panic that threatened to engulf me. I wasn't just going to give up. I wasn't going to be swallowed by the dark. The voice in my head, no, the creature's voice, tried to drown out my thoughts. It screamed at me, telling me to surrender, to let go, to become it. But I wasn't going to listen. I focused. I focused on the feeling of the ground beneath my feet, the texture of the walls, the faint hum of the air conditioner. The world around me was real, and I would not let it be consumed by that thing. And then I heard it, the faintest sound. A voice. Wake up. It was soft, almost a whisper. But it was enough. My mind snapped into focus. My eyes flew open. I wasn't alone. There was someone else here. Someone helping me. But where? The room felt different now. The pressure, the suffocating weight was gone. The creature was still there, but it was retreating, its form weakening. It seemed to flicker like a bad television signal, distorting in and out of focus at the mirror. It was still there, but it was fading, growing smaller, less significant. I felt the tug to it, but I refused to give in. I could hear the whisper again. Wake up, you can escape. This time, I knew where it was coming from. It wasn't just a voice, it was a person. A voice from the outside. And in that moment, I realized this was how I would survive. The voice was clearer now, and I could feel it pulling me toward something, toward freedom. But I couldn't afford to look back. I couldn't let myself be distracted. I had to focus. I didn't know how long I had been trapped in this house or if I was even truly awake, but I knew one thing. The creature, the mirror, it had been playing with me this entire time. I turned away from the mirror. The reflection no longer held my attention, no longer drew me in with its twisted promises. I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need to understand it. I needed to escape. My mind, though clouded with fear and doubt, was starting to come back together, piece by piece. The room felt less suffocating now, less oppressive, but the presence was still there, lingering like a storm waiting to break. It was getting harder to think clearly, but I forced myself to push forward. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I kept moving. The voice, the real voice, was getting louder. It was a woman's voice, soft but filled with urgency, like someone who had been waiting for a long time for me to finally hear her. "You can do it," she said again, this time more forcefully. "You have to wake up. Don't let it take you." I felt the wall behind me, running my hand along the rough surface. There was something comforting about it, a reminder that this wasn't all just an illusion. I was in a real place. I was in control again. The creature's laughter echoed from behind me, low and cruel. It was as though it knew I was regaining my strength. "You can't escape," it sneered, its voice full of venom. "You'll always come back to me, always." I gritted my teeth, ignoring it. It wanted me to be afraid. It wanted me to crumble under the weight of its power, but I refused. I wasn't going to let it win. I wasn't going to let it define me. I ran for the window, my hands outstretched, reaching for the latch. The sound of the creature's voice grew louder, more frantic, more desperate, but I couldn't be distracted. My fingers brushed the latch-cold metal against my skin. I yanked. It opened with all my strength. The sound of the window creaking as it moved was a relief. There was freedom on the other side. I could feel the cool night air rush into the room, fresh and clean, carrying with it the scent of rain, of life. I didn't stop to look back. I didn't want to see the creature's face again. Didn't want to give it the satisfaction of watching me hesitate. I climbed through the window, my body trembling as I stepped out onto the ledge. For a moment, I thought I might fall, the ground far below me, the darkness pressing in from all sides. But the voice, the real voice, was still there, pushing me forward, urging me to move. "You're almost there," she said, her words filled with a strange warmth. I took a deep breath and swung my legs over the edge, feeling the sharpness of the night air against my skin, and then I jumped. The world spun around me as I fell, the wind rushing past my ears. For a moment, I thought I might crash into the ground, but then I landed softly, safely on the cool grass below. I was outside. I was free. But as I lay there, panting, heart racing, the voice began to fade. The world around me began to change, flickering in and out of focus. The house, the dark figure, everything, it was slipping away, as if it were a dream I was waking up from. I blinked rapidly, struggling to keep my eyes open. "Wake up!" The voice shouted one final time, more desperate than before. "This isn't over." I gasped, my heart leaping in my chest as I jerked awake. The ground beneath me was solid, real. I wasn't in the mirror. I wasn't in the nightmare. I wasn't in that suffocating house anymore. But the moment I tried to move, my body felt strange. Stiff, as if I had been asleep for much longer than just a few moments. I took in my surroundings. The world around me was too quiet. I couldn't hear the familiar hum of traffic, the distant sounds of people talking, the rustling of the wind in the trees. Everything was still. Everything was eerily silent. I tried to push myself up from the ground, but something was wrong. The world around me didn't look right. The trees, the grass, they were too dark, too still, like the shadows themselves were waiting to swallow me whole. It was then that I heard it, a low, bone-chilling growl. I froze, every muscle in my body seizing up. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to know, but I had no choice. I turned my head slowly, and there it was, the creature, standing in front of me. Its form was even more twisted now. Its limbs stretched impossibly long, its grin wide and grotesque. But this time, it wasn't just a reflection. It was here, in the real world. "You're never free," it whispered, its voice a hiss, like the rustle of leaves in the wind. "You can't escape. You're mine now." I stood there, rooted to the spot, frozen in terror. The creature's eyes bore into mine, dark and endless, pulling me in like a magnet. I could feel it. It wasn't over. It wasn't over at all. I could hear the whisper in my head again. "Wake up. You have to wake up. Now." But it was too late. The creature's eyes gleamed in the dark, its grin widening as it moved closer, its unnaturally long fingers stretching toward me. I could feel the coldness of its presence, like ice seeping into my bones. It was real. This was no longer just a nightmare or a twisted reflection. The thing that had haunted me in the mirror was standing right in front of me, in the flesh. I staggered backward, my heart pounding, panic flooding my chest. My breath came in sharp gasps. I had thought I had escaped. I had thought that jumping from the window was my way out, my escape from this endless nightmare. But I was wrong. The world around me was a distorted version of reality, the shadows too dark, the trees too still. And now the creature was here, just as it had promised. "You think you can run?" It hissed, its voice sharp and harsh, the words wrapping around me like chains. "You can't run. You can't hide. You're mine." I wanted to scream, to fight, but my body refused to cooperate. I was paralyzed, stuck in place as the creature closed the gap between us. Its breath-hot, rancid slithered through the air, choking me with its foul scent. My mind was scrambling, trying to process what was happening, but the terror was too much. I was lost, consumed by the fear of being taken by this thing. But then, just as the creature reached for me, a flicker of something inside me, something deep, primal sparked. It was a brief moment of clarity, a desperate surge of will. I wasn't going to just give in, not now. Not when I was so close to freedom. I pushed forward, breaking the paralysis, and with a burst of strength, I threw myself to the side. The creature's hand missed me by inches, but its screech sharp and deafening ripped through the air, sending a jolt of terror through my body. I scrambled to my feet, my legs unsteady beneath me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. The creature's growl followed me, low and menacing, as I ran through the darkened landscape. My feet hit the cold ground, the night air biting at my skin, but I didn't dare look back. I could feel its eyes on me, burning into my back, watching my every move. It was relentless, like a predator stalking its prey. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to get away, to get far, far away from that thing. The trees seemed to close in around me, the shadows stretching longer, making the path ahead seem endless. But I kept running, my heart hammering in my chest. And then I saw it. A light, faint but steady, flickering in the distance. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It was a sign. Someone was out there. Someone could help. I wasn't alone. I pushed myself harder, faster, the light growing bigger as I drew closer. The sound of my footsteps drowned out everything else, the growl of the creature, the whispers in my head, they all faded into the background. I was almost there. But then, just as I reached the light, the ground beneath me shifted. I felt it before. I saw it. A tremor, like the earth itself was shaking beneath me. The air grew heavier, thicker, and I stumbled, my legs giving way as I collapsed to the ground. I looked up, expecting to see whatever was behind the light, but instead, I saw nothing. The light was gone. In its place, there was nothing but an endless stretch of darkness. I froze, panic surging through me as the shadows seemed to grow taller, closer. My breathing became shallow, erratic. It was like I had never moved at all. Like I was back where I started, trapped. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound died in my throat, stifled by the overwhelming silence. And then, from the darkness, came the voice. "You'll never escape," it whispered, a soft, almost affectionate tone. But there was no comfort in it, only coldness. "This is where you belong, forever." The creature stepped from the shadows, its form looming over me, its eyes glowing with a twisted hunger. It was no longer just a reflection, no longer confined to the glass. It had crossed into this world, into my world. I was going to die here. No, I wouldn't. I pushed myself to my feet, my hands shaking as I looked around desperately. There had to be a way out. There had to be something. But everything around me was wrong, distorted, like the whole world was bending, twisting. The creature's eyes locked onto mine, its grin widening as it took a step closer. It was too late. The voice inside my head, the woman's voice, was gone. There was no one left to help me. No one to pull me from this nightmare. The creature reached for me, its claws just inches from my skin. I couldn't move. I couldn't fight. It was the end. But then I felt a sharp, sudden jolt of pain, a searing sensation in my chest. I gasped, looking down, my breath catching in my throat. A knife, a blade was sticking out of my chest. I looked up, blinking in disbelief that it wasn't the creature who had done this. It was someone else. Someone I didn't expect. A figure stepped from the shadows, tall and dark, their face obscured. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The creature screeched, thrashing wildly as the figure twisted the blade deeper, wrenching it free with a fluid motion. I stood there, unable to comprehend what was happening. My body felt weak, my vision spinning. The creature's screeching became more frantic, more desperate, but it was dying. I could feel it. The figure turned toward me, their face still hidden in shadow, and they reached out. "Come on," the figure whispered, their voice urgent. "You have to go, now." I didn't understand, but I didn't question. I couldn't. I stumbled toward them, my legs shaky, my head spinning. And just as the creature let out one final, guttural scream, I was pulled into the shadows. The world around me spun as I was dragged into the shadows. I barely had time to process what was happening before a heavy hand grasped my arm, pulling me deeper into the darkness. My mind was racing, my heart still hammering in my chest. Who was this figure? Was this some kind of rescue? Or was I just stepping into another nightmare? I wanted to speak, to ask questions, but no words came. My throat felt tight, like I was suffocating. The figure didn't speak, didn't offer any explanation. They just kept moving, swift, precise, and silent, leading me through the pitch black forest that seemed to stretch on forever. The air was thick, oppressive, and I could feel the weight of something pressing against me, like the very night itself was alive and watching. After what felt like an eternity, we reached a small, dimly lit cabin. The door creaked open, and the figure ushered me inside without a word. Once we were in, they locked the door behind us, casting the room into an eerie silence. I staggered to the center of the room, trying to catch my breath. My chest burned from the pain of the knife wound, but it was faint now, like an echo in the distance. Finally, the figure turned to me, and in the flickering light of a single candle, I could make out their face. It was covered in dirt, their eyes dark and tired, but their expression was focused, determined. This person was no stranger to fear, to survival. "I don't have much time," they said in a low, strained voice. "You're not safe. Not yet." The weight of their words hit me like a punch to the gut. What did they mean? What was going on? Was the creature still following me? Before I could speak, the figure moved to a wooden table, picking up a small vial of something that glimmered faintly in the candlelight. They handed it to me, their hands steady despite the chaos that had just unfolded. "Drink it," they ordered. "It'll help. It's the only way you'll be able to survive the next part." I looked at the vial, unsure. There was something about this person ... something strange and unsettling. But there was no other option. No time to think. I took the vial and drank it in one swift motion, my throat burning as it went down. The liquid was bitter, metallic, and I nearly gagged, but the effects were immediate. The pain in my chest began to ease, and a wave of cold washed over me, numbing my senses. "What's happening?" I gasped, feeling lightheaded. The figure didn't answer right away, only watched me with a steady gaze. "The creature, the thing you saw ... it's not just hunting you. It's after your soul. It wants you trapped, stuck, lost." They paused, their voice growing darker. "That mirror you saw, It's a doorway, a portal between worlds. But once you're in, it doesn't let you leave unless it wants you to. My heart skipped. A portal? They nodded, their eyes narrowing. The creature's the gatekeeper. And the only way to truly escape is to destroy it. But that's easier said than done. I tried to wrap my mind around it. A portal? A creature that could control worlds? It was too much, too insane to comprehend. "You're lying," I whispered. But even as I said it, the weight of my own words felt hollow. Everything I had seen up until now had been impossible. My entire reality had shattered into pieces. The figure didn't argue. Instead, they gestured to the dark corner of the cabin. "You need to rest. You're not going to make it through this unless you're strong. The creature won't stop until it has you, but if you can get your head straight, you might stand a chance." I didn't know how long I had slept. My body felt heavy, like I had been asleep for days, but when I woke, the cabin was still dark. The flickering candlelight had died down to a soft glow, and the figure was no longer in the room. I struggled to sit up, wincing as the remnants of the wound on my chest throbbed. The pain wasn't completely gone, but it was more manageable. Now, I forced myself to my feet, the floor creaking under my weight as I moved toward the window. The forest outside was eerily quiet. There was no sign of life, no movement, just an endless stretch of trees shrouded in mist. It felt like the whole world had fallen silent, waiting for something, waiting for me. A chill ran down my spine as I remembered the creature, the growls, the twisted grin. It was still out there somewhere, and it was waiting. I turned back to the table, scanning the room for anything that might help me. My gaze fell on an old, leather-bound book. It was thick, well-worn, and covered in strange symbols that I didn't recognize. I picked it up cautiously, flipping through the pages. Most of the text was in a language I couldn't understand, but there were sketches, drawings of the creature, the mirror, and symbols that seemed to pulsate with an unnatural energy. As I flipped through the pages, one section caught my eye. It was a drawing of the very thing I had seen in the mirror, the creature. And below it, in a language that I could barely decipher, was a single word: exorcism. I stared at the word for a long time. Was this the key? Was there a way to force the creature out, to destroy it once and for all? Suddenly, the door of the cabin slammed open, and the figure returned. They didn't speak immediately, but I could see the urgency in their eyes. "We need to move," they said quickly. "It's coming." I closed the book, my heart racing. "How do you know it's coming?" "They're never far behind," the figure said grimly, "and we don't have much time. You have to do what's in that book. You have to use the exorcism to destroy it. If you don't, it will keep following you, no matter where you go." We hurried out of the cabin, the figure leading the way through the trees. My legs felt weak, but I pushed myself forward, adrenaline and fear coursing through my veins. The creature was coming, and it wouldn't stop until it had me. We made our way to a clearing where the ground was covered in thick fog, and in the center of the clearing was a small stone altar. The figure stopped and turned to me. "This is it," they said. "This is where it all ends." I looked at the altar, my heart pounding in my chest. The creature wasn't far behind now. I could feel its presence, like a dark cloud hanging over me. The figure gestured to the book. "You know what to do. You have to complete the exorcism ritual. If you don't, it will destroy everything." I nodded, though my hands trembled. I had no choice. I had to do this. I opened the book, the pages feeling cold against my fingers. As I read the words aloud, struggling to pronounce the strange language, the air around me seemed to crackle. The ground beneath me began to shake. I felt the energy building, pulsing through the air, but at the same time, I could sense the creature getting closer. It was right there, just behind me, watching. And then, it appeared. The creature stepped out from the fog, its form even more monstrous than before. It let out a deafening screech, its eyes locked onto mine. It was ready to finish what it had started, but I wasn't going to let it. With the final words of the ritual on my lips, the ground beneath the creature cracked open, and a blinding light erupted from the altar. The creature screamed, thrashing, trying to escape, but it was too late. The power of the ritual was too strong. The light consumed it, wrapping around it like chains, pulling it into the earth. Its form twisted, distorted, as if it were being torn apart. The screeching intensified, but I couldn't look away. Finally, with one last scream, the creature vanished, leaving nothing behind but a faint whisper in the air. I stood there, panting, my heart still racing. The fog around me began to dissipate, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. I had done it. I had survived. The figure stepped forward, a small smile on their face. "You did it," they said. "You're free." But even as they spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare was far from over. The creature was gone, yes, but the mirror, the portal, it was still out there, waiting for the next victim. And as I looked at the figure, I realized something. I wasn't the first to survive. I wasn't the last.